Now, however you look at it, the employment figures and the backpedaling on winter fuel doesn't look good for Rachel Reeves, and all this, I'm sure, will be dominating the PMQs tomorrow. The political drama of post-election Britain, and it seems Labour has found itself trapped in a paradox, eager to be seen as fiscally prudent, yet terrified of being painted as cruel, and nowhere is this now more painfully evident than in this week's dual spectacle, the quiet economic storm of rising unemployment figures and the far noisier political backpedalling on winter fuel payments. So beginning with the cold truth, when Labour came to power, one of its first actions was to restrict the winter fuel allowance, cutting support from 10 million pensioners. The justification, an alleged 22 billion black hole in the public finances, which when Kemi Badenoch came to power, she made no effort really to challenge. Austerity dressed in technocratic virtue, and so the universal payment became a means-tested benefit for only the poorest, those claiming pension credit. Now, of course, Kemi Badenoch did mention the fact that the 22 billion black hole was not proven and was probably a false claim last week. But that, I think, is the first time she's made that comment, whereas the Prime Minister has made the 22 billion black hole a mantra which is wheeled out every single week. And Rachel Reeves has now performed a dramatic U-turn. So the blowback on the poorest, on the pensioners, not generally known for insurrection, they spoke through the ballot box at the local elections. It turns out they didn't appreciate being asked to choose between heating and eating. And so restoring the benefit to 9 million pensioners with incomes under £35,000 and clawing it back through taxation for those above, the result is an absurd bureaucratic tangle, described by some as a widow's tax and by others as a monument to policy improvisation under pressure. And yet, even as the Chancellor reverses course, Ed Miliband is sent out like a loyal retainer to say, in effect, we will not apologise. The tone is patronising, and according to Miliband, no pensioner asked him for an apology. Well, I dare say nobody asks for an apology at the doorstep, and they wouldn't be asking for an apology from the person looking after the climate control. They'd be asking for an apology from the person looking after the money, which is Rachel Reeves. So sending someone else who manages a different brief to do the non-apology is a little bit a little bit lacking in courage. And they asked for their heating bill to stop resembling a ransom note. The rhetorical line is clear. We were right then. We're also right now. That's what the government is trying to put forward, a masterclass in political doublethink. And behind this is the telling fear. If Labour apologises, it admits fault. If it admits fault, it is no longer the party of fiscal restoration, but merely the party of reactive patchwork. Now, to the economic backdrop that makes all this the more jarring, the latest figures reveal that Britain has lost 276,000 jobs since Reeves's autumn budget. A rise in employer national insurance contributions, a 25 billion tax on businesses was meant to fill the fiscal hole. What it has filled instead was the redundancy spreadsheet. Unemployment has climbed to 4.6%, the highest in nearly 4 years. Payroll numbers fell in May by over 100,000, the sharpest drop since the dark spring of 2020. Hospitality, retail and lower income sectors, precisely where cost of living pressures bite hardest, are bleeding jobs. Business leaders warned this would happen. The NIC's rise was labelled rightly a tax on jobs. Yet the government's response has been to whistle through the fog, citing stability, while the labour market cracks beneath their feet. They did the same thing about the VAT on schools. This is the central contradiction of Labour's economic stance. It proclaims prudence while spending politically. And it doesn't count the cost. It doesn't do the sums before announcing the policy. The winter fuel reversal alone has cost 1.25 billion annually. The coming spending review, we're told, will involve £5 billion in cuts. to unprotected departments like housing, local government and policing. So here we have a government that cannot raise taxes, won't increase borrowing for day-to-day spending, and is trapped in the corset of self-imposed rules. Something must give. And what's giving, it seems, are the promises of change. And critics, including the Lib Dems, are already calling this austerity too, but with warmer slogans and colder homes. The real damage is not just fiscal, it's reputational. Labour promised a new deal for pensioners, a plan for secure retirements, and the end of cruel bureaucracies. Instead, it has conjured a new one. The party has lurched from technocratic severity to populist retreat, and somehow managed to alienate both civil servants and voters in the process. Reeves may hope that by acting early and listening she has stemmed the tide, but the image lingers. A party that tried to take money from pensioners in the middle of an energy crisis and still refuses to say that it was wrong. To paraphrase George Orwell, political language is designed to make lies sound truthful and policies respectable. But even Orwell might struggle with, "We're not sorry, we just listened really hard and changed our minds completely." Labour has learned that you can't quietly freeze out 10 million pensioners and expect warmth at the polls. But whether it has learned how to govern decisively without collapsing into apology-avoidant chaos remains to be seen. I think tomorrow's PMQs will be very interesting. I hope Badenoch manages to rise at least marginally to the occasion. Past experience suggests that she won't, but maybe there'll be somebody else in the wings ready to take on the mantle of holding this government properly to account. Maybe it will be from the SNP ranks. Maybe Mr. Flynn will stand up and say something brilliant. Maybe it will be some other person from the Conservative ranks, David Davis, even Jenrick. Maybe it will be Reform UK. But somebody, somewhere, has to hold this government to account. Somebody, somewhere, has to do the job that Kemi Badenoch is clearly incapable of doing.